1.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the May 12th, 2022 meeting of our Finance Committee. This is Councilman Britt Moore. We're here at City Hall, and with me is Councilman Michael Holmes and Councilman Victor Jones. I do believe Monica Peters will be here, but we are already a couple minutes behind with a fairly busy agenda, so we're going to jump right into our items for today. And the first one on our list is item 2022-219. This has to do with a contract for some underground cables, and our Assistant Director of Utilities, Tyler Barrier, is going to present.
Good afternoon. Got two items today. This is the first one. This is the purchase of 5 various types of wire that we commonly use in the electric department. As you are probably aware, we self-perform our work, but this is just for the purchase of materials. No particular project for this to be used, just regular warehouse stock.
Keep an inventory. How's the supply of this? Still fairly easy to get, or is it caught up in supply chain too?
It depends on the material. On the bid tab, if you look down here, anything that's copper or some of our bigger wire, we've got some pretty big lead times on. Wire not as bad as some of the other electrical components like transformers, but the big thing here is price increases. Normally, you wouldn't see me coming to Finance Committee for regular replenished stock, but that's the world we live in right now.
It certainly is. Any other comments or questions on this item?
Motion approved. Second.
There's a motion and a second for approval. I don't have that sheet to do that with, but we'll do it this way. Councilman Holmes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Jones?
Aye.
Councilman Moore is an aye. That motion passes. Next item, 2022-220, is also a contract.
This is for the purchase of 20 residential style. These are small 25 kVA transformers. There's a picture on the bottom of the item there if you want to see it. These are not actually, it says on there that this surplus, but PG&E or Pacific Gas and Electric out on the West Coast actually has contracts in place where they have production slots with various vendors due to a shortage in development on their service territory, which is primarily California. They are not utilizing some of their production slots, so we're going to try to jump in there and get 20 of these smaller style transformers in its place. So this is to utilize that production slot that we've been given and purchase 20 of those units. This will be for residential development.
And you hope to have these in if that goes well?
I think the estimated delivery time of these was August, so not terrible, because they're already a production slot set. Now, if we just went out for bid on them, the last bid I got was like 80 weeks lead time, so August is pretty good.
Good.
Versus 80 weeks.
Certainly.
Comments, questions?
Motion to approve. Second.
There's a motion and a second for approval. Councilman Holmes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Jones?
Aye.
Councilman Moore is an aye. That motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Berry.
Thank you.
Next item, 2022-221, is a resolution on the Daniel Brooks project, which has been in the works for a while, and Assistant City Manager Eric Almeida will speak on this.
Yes, sir. Committee, the Housing Authority has requested approval for a revised not-to-exceed amount for their bond issue. As you recall, back in November 2nd, 2020, the City Council approved a not-to-exceed amount for those bonds of $11 million. The authority is requesting an increase of that to $14 million not-to-exceed amount. The bonds will be issued for the project. This does not impact the city's participation that has been agreed to of $6.5 million, and the city is not responsible for this debt, but just as the overseeing authority, you all must approve the not to exceed amount. Our understanding from the Housing Authority is that this is due to cost increases, and that they intend to issue these bonds this summer.
Inflation doesn't miss a crack, does it? Anybody got comments or questions?
Motion approved. Second.
There's a motion and a second for approval. Councilman Holmes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Jones?
Aye.
Councilman Moore is an aye. That motion passes. Next item is 2022-222, a budget ordinance, and our budget manager, Stephen Howerlick, will present.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. This item is a budget ordinance appropriating $3 million for the purchase of property at 300A Oak Street and 331 West Russell Avenue. At the May 2nd, 2022 City Council meeting, the mayor and council approved $3 million in American Rescue Plan funds for government services. We've structured our American Rescue Plan fund amendments this way to reduce our administrative burden, and then it frees up funds in the general fund, which can be used for any government purpose. So it freed up $3 million for the purchase of this property. And so this amendment just creates a project in the capital projects fund and budgets the $3 million so we can proceed with the purchase. Happy to answer any questions, and we would recommend approval.
Anybody? This is part and parcel of the grant we've applied for, right?
That's correct.
And we hope to hear back September-ish.
Yes, that's correct.
Then I'll make a motion to approve item 2022-222.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Councilman Holmes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Jones?
Aye.
Councilman Moore is an aye. That motion passes. Item 2022-223 is a contract from our Convention and Visitor Bureau request to be approved on their budget, and Stephen will explain a little bit more on that.
Yes, this request is to approve the FY 22-23 Convention and Visitors Bureau or Visit High Point budget, and also give the city manager authority to execute a contract with that group for next fiscal year. This is an annual item that we bring forward around during the budget. The proposed budget from the Visit High Point is included in materials. Representatives from Visit High Point were at yesterday's budget work session to present, and we would recommend approval of the item.
There's no questions or comments. I'll make a motion to approve item 2022-223.
Second.
Councilman Holmes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Jones?
Aye.
Councilman Moore is an aye. That motion passes. Next item, 2022-224, is another request for budget time. Stephen, tell us about that one.
Yes, sir. Similar to the previous item, but this one has to do with the Market Authority's budget for FY 22-23. Market Authority brings the budget, their draft budget around this time, similar to Visit High Point. Their draft budget will be considered by the Market Authority Executive Committee on May the 24th, and current plans are for the Market Authority Board to finalize their budget on June the 21st. The proposed budget is included in materials, and we would recommend approval.
Comments or questions? I'll make a motion to approve item 2022-224.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Councilman Holmes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Jones?
Aye.
And Mayor Pro Tem Peters has joined us.
Aye.
You ready to vote on that one? No, haven't seen it at the budget session yesterday. So that motion passes. Item 2022-225, it has to do with the Block Grant CARES Act funds, and Stephen will continue with us.
Yes, sir. Back in June of 2021, amendments were made to the 2019-20 Action Plan and 2015 to 2019 Consolidated Plan. However, a budget amendment for funds of those amendments were done so was never completed. So this is an appropriation of a special allocation of Community Development Block Grant CDBG CV funds that were originally awarded under the Federal CARES Act. And they can be used to prevent, prepare for, and respond to the coronavirus pandemic. Simply just was not done at the time of the amendment to the action plan and consolidated plan, and so we're just appropriating the funds as required. It's all federal money, and there's no local match requirement. We'd recommend approval.
Comments or questions? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve item 2022-225.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Councilman Holmes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Jones?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Peters?
Aye.
Councilman Moore is an aye. That motion passes. Next item, 2022-226, has to do with the budget ordinance and fleet services. Stephen?
Yes, sir. This item is asking to approve an excavator for surplus to appropriate $77,000 from the sale of the equipment that we're asking you all to approve for surplus, and then utilize those proceeds for a replacement excavator, and this would be for the Water Sewer Mains Division. The current excavator is a little larger than what's needed for the division. The replacement would be a vacuum excavator, which would allow the crews to perform soft digs around utilities, perform exploratory digging, and limit disturbances in yards and roadways. Annually, we budget revenues from the sale of capital assets. Our current projections show us meeting or exceeding that budget without counting the sale of this surplus equipment, and so we're comfortable using these proceeds to purchase the replacement of the equipment. The funds will be available from the sale of the equipment, and we would recommend approval of the item.
Comments or questions? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve item 2022-226.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Councilman Holmes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Jones?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Peters?
Aye.
Councilman Moore is an aye. That motion passes. Thank you, Stephen. Next item is 2022-227. This is concerning some GEO-bond projects, and Financial Services Director Bobby Fitzjohn will speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you're aware, we went through a series of bond issues over the past few months. This week, we actually closed the 2022 A, B, and C general obligation bonds, as well as the 2022 revenue bonds for the water sewer system. Most of the project funds were already appropriated in projects in anticipation of reimbursing ourselves. However, there are a couple here that we do need to go ahead and appropriate so that we can properly record those proceeds. Specifically with the GEO bonds, we issued the funding for the Burton and Washington Street projects. In total, it's about $10.6 million that will go to those two projects. They are currently in the engineering phase, and Trevor's here. We got transportation over there with Greg, if y'all have any questions, but they're still in the engineering phase. From what I understand, they're due to be bid for construction in the spring and summer of next year. Still sound right? And this just, again, appropriates those proceeds.
Comments or questions for Bobby? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve item 2022-227.
Second.
There is a motion and a second for approval. Councilman Holmes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Jones?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Peters?
Aye.
Councilman Moore is an aye. That motion passes. Next item, 2022-228, is a capital project ordinance. Bobby will speak to that.
Yes, sir. And we actually have an update to this where we fixed a typo in the one that went to the agenda packet.
Okay.
As I mentioned, this is, again, just appropriating proceeds that had not previously been appropriated. This is from the 2022 revenue bonds that we just issued. This will appropriate $7,980,000 to the UV East Side UV disinfection project. This is currently in the engineering phase. Construction is expected to be bid in this current or the next fiscal year, fiscal 23. It also appropriates the cost of issuance for actually issuing the bonds. So I don't want anybody to think it cost us $480,000 to issue $7 million. We actually issued about 40 in total. Those proceeds were just already budgeted in the projects. And this item has been updated online. I just wasn't sure if it made it to your packet.
Any comments or questions on this item? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve item 2022-228.
Second.
There's a motion and a second for approval. Councilman Holmes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Jones?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Peters?
Aye.
Councilman Moore is an aye. That motion passes. Next item, 2022-229, is another budget order amendments in this line, and Bobby will explain this particular one.
So this will help us record the cost of issuance for the general obligation bonds that we just issued, as well as the refunding of the 2012 and 2012C general obligation bonds. I've got some total interest costs there if you're interested to see where we're currently issuing these. If you think about it in the way you think about a mortgage, you can think about the 2022B as a 20-year term bond, and we issued it about 3.23% over that life. The one thing I do want to point out, I've kind of talked a little bit about how interest rates have been challenging over the past really 4 months. Back in January when we were looking, this 2022 C bond would have been closer to maybe just under 1%, and we ended up issuing about 1.96. And even if we had waited until we did that through a private bank sale that you all approved. If we had waited till market the same week that we sold the rest of the bonds, we would have essentially not been able to issue because the rates would have gone so much higher.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been worth it. So we've certainly faced an interesting interest rate market over the past few months. I will say on the other side of that, we are actually earning interest income again on our cash reserves. And so there's some balance that happens there. But just kind of want to give you all that update while I was up here. And let me know if y'all have any questions.
Are we breaking even?
I would say we have more cash than we have debt, right? So all things considered, we want to be able to earn interest income on some of these cash deposits. And we are, we're a great credit. We just got reviewed, maintained all of our credit, had our great ratings reaffirmed. So issuing debt's not a scary thing.
yeah.
We're getting great rates. It's just comparison to where we could have been a few months ago.
Yeah.
It's kind of tough when you see those numbers in front of you.
Yeah, I got you.
It's a tough time to look at that, and from all indicators, it looks like we may be climbing for a little bit longer.
Absolutely.
Keep an eye on that, and appreciate the job that you do. Any other comments or questions? I'll make a motion to approve item 2022-229.
Second.
There's a motion and a second for approval. Councilman Holmes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Jones?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Peters?
Aye.
Councilman Moore is an aye. That motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby. Appreciate it. Next item, 2022-230 is concerning the sale of city property, and right-of-way coordinator Kim Thor will present.
Thank you. Pedro Solis has offered a bid of $13,000 for a city-owned vacant residential lot at 1100 Jefferson Street. The property is about 14,375 square feet, and we would like to sell this through the upset bid process with city council approval.
Any comments or questions concerning this item? Hearing none, make a motion for approval, item 2022-230.
Second.
There's a motion and a second for approval. Councilman Holmes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Jones?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Peters?
Aye.
Councilman Moore is an aye. That motion passes. Next item, 2022-231, is a resolution asking for rescinding on a condemnation. Kim Thor will present again.
Okay. February the 7th, the city council adopted a resolution to authorize a condemnation to acquire an easement with, for the Montlou Avenue Improvement Project for the property at 302 Quabain Avenue. The owner sold the property, and we were able to reach the new owner and make a resolution and get the easement that we needed. So we would like to adopt a resolution to rescind that resolution from February 7th.
And that's good news.
Yeah, it is.
Any comment or questions? Item 2022-231, I will recommend approval.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Councilman Holmes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Jones?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Peters?
Aye.
Councilman Moore is an aye. That motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Next item, 2022-232, is going to be Economic Development Director Sandy Dunbeck talking about some incentives.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Chair and other members. The first item is a pass-through incentive grant from the state of North Carolina. They were eligible for a 1NC grant of $50,000. That's the first payment of what will be multiple others. So we have received that funding in-house and just want to pass that on to Amada for their large metalworking project up in North High Point on Amada Drive in Premier Center.
And just for those that may be listening, these are performance-based released off benchmarks, correct?
That's correct, and they have met and exceeded many of their benchmarks and are
Good.
continuing through that process. So it was over an $82 million project.
Great. Any other comments or questions? Then I'll make a motion for approval of item 2022-232.
Second.
There is a motion and a second for approval. Councilman Holmes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Jones?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Peters?
Aye.
Councilman Moore is an aye. That motion passes. Next item, 2022-233. Sandy,
Yes.
explain that one.
Thank you.
Thanks.
This is a request related to Metalworks of High Point. They are requesting a building reuse grant from the state of North Carolina, and that is under consideration. And when companies ask for those grants, the state asks that we have a resolution of support from the city, that we certainly concur with that, and we would ultimately be the pass-through for that. So that's what this first item is asking.
Any comments or questions? I'd just like to say, for those that may be listening, that this is a local company, a small manufacturing company. I think they deserve a shout out and support, so I will very happily recommend approval of item 2022-233.
Second.
There's a motion and a second for approval. Councilman Holmes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Jones?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Peters?
Aye.
Councilman Moore is an aye. Thank you, Ms. Dunbeck. And we'll go to the talks about some public hearings in this next section, and that is item 2022-234.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this would be a public hearing for consideration of performance-based incentives from the city of High Point to Metalworks of High Point in the amount of $75,000 for building upfit incentives. And we would hold a public hearing on the 16th, and company officials will be here to present and share more about that project. But it is consideration for them to purchase an additional building at 1245 Hickory Chapel Road that would add about 38,000 square feet production capacity. And also they would add 20 jobs paying above the county average wage. And as you mentioned, a local homegrown company, family owned, certainly in an industry sector, very important to our region currently.
Okay, we will look forward to hearing more of this from them on Monday, the 16th.
Yes.
Next item, 2022-235. This one is about public hearing for Ecolab.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a project for Ecolab, and again, a public hearing, and company officials will be with us also on Monday night. So this company is considering a new location at High Point North off of Sandy Ridge Road. It would be the first project to kick off that park, and they will be investing approximately, I think it was $27,800,000, and causing an ultimate project of over $93 million to be constructed on that site. It would be the first project there. It's an over 550-acre park in North High Point. So again, company officials will be with us. The request is for $414,863 in incentives based upon that investment amount of $27,800, and would be paid out over time post-performance.
Very good. Any comments or questions for Sandy? We'll we'll look forward to hearing from them on Monday as well.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. We're getting near the end. If you have 1 minute, I had a question for you, if you got a minute to hang around.
Certainly.
But if you got somewhere you got to be, you can go. All right. The next item, 2022-236, is also a discussion on a public hearing. And Stephen Howerlick will come back and tell us about that one.
Yes, sir. As prior to adoption of the budget, it's required by North Carolina statutes that a public hearing is held. And so the public hearing is scheduled for Monday, May the 16th at the city council meeting. Notice of the public hearing was advertised in the High Point Enterprise. And for those that may not be able to attend and provide their comments in person, other methods to provide public comment can be made by calling 336-883-3522 and leaving a message, emailing the comments to publiccomment@highpointnc.gov, or dropping off the comments in the utility payment drop boxes on either side of City Hall.
Okay. We appreciate that information, and hopefully that will get out. If Mr. Kimbrough happens to be listening, please make sure that information gets out to folks that may want to give their opinion on the proposed budget. Anything else need to come before finance for today? All right, we moved on through that pretty quick. If there's nothing else, then I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any opposition? We're adjourned.